Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs.
Leave this all in.
Yeah, I'll leave it all in. Okay, that'll be great. Yeah, it's just reality. So anyway, thanks as always for listening to Fluff and Crunch. I have a guest tonight, or today, because it is tonight, an odd time that I'm recording in the evening. But I have a guest today who's going to talk about a game that he has designed and come back to and revised, has been available, but is now going to be available in a new manner. That because of the type of game it is and the reason it's available, this is actually, I think, really novel. This is something new and I think pretty exciting, actually. So what I wanted to do is have Al Spader on to talk about his 2d20, and it's not world builders anymore. It's just 2d20, or is it just world builders?
I think it's 2d20 commercial license,
something like that. Yeah. So there's the community license from Modifius for 2d20 games, and you had originally written this Sentience for that, and now it's operating under a different license. And like I said, we're going to get to this whole thing of why it's novel, of how it's available now, or it's about to be available now. But what I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to talk about the game itself. I saw it in its earliest form, and now I've seen it in its say current final form. But I wanted to talk about, like, what's the 30-second elevator pitch for Sentience, the 2d20 role-playing game? What is it?
Awesome. Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity, Jeremy. This is exciting. I love talking with you all the time. You've got such great insights. So, Sentience is a game where you role play as robots who were left on a planet that randomly gain sentience. But there's a catch. You were there to terraform the planet so that when humanity arrives, they could settle there. And now you've gained sentience before humanity has arrived. And the game is all about building a society and learning what it means to be alive.
So let's talk about talk a little bit about the system first, and then we can talk about maybe the contents of the book, and then the story possibilities, because I'm thinking of all those things. It is a 2d20 based system. We, like me, like you, we've used the Modifius's 2d20 system from their SRD to come up with their own games. What can you tell us about your version of 2d20? I mean, obviously it's been interpreted differently by Modifius for all the different properties that it sits underneath. What can you tell us about your version of it for this game?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, as a former or as a writer for Star Trek Adventures, that system is very dear to my heart. So I stuck pretty close to that. We do go a little bit astray where your stats, your two sets of stats, are determined by one, what were you programmed to do when you arrived? And two, what are these emotions that you're starting to develop as you have gained sentience and self-awareness? So when you want to come up with a target number in Sentience, you combine an emotion and a protocol and come up with that target number. And so it really encourages players to explore how their character is feeling when they are doing different things. We keep challenge dice in the storyline. When robots first became self-aware, many lashed out. They were confused, they were scared, and there was a lot of aggression. In fact, the first couple of years after the awakening, it was a pretty scary place to be. And so we have weapons, we have, and some people may choose to leave those in. Some people might choose to get rid of them. But all in all, it is very similar to Star Trek Adventures in that you have values, you have programs that you can install that help your critical range when you're trying to roll a success. And the last big thing is your values. They're kind of like what make you human, so to speak, right? Like this is who you are as a person. And there are times in the game where you can kind of let your robot AI self take over to push you through different challenges. And when that happens, you actually start losing your values and you start becoming more of an AI. And if you ever have zero values, you revert to being an AI and can no longer be played in the game.
So so on a story side, or rather, actually on a system side, so it sounds to me like it's very much like, and I remember the first version of it that I looked over for you. It's a lot like Star Trek Adventures First Edition.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so if anyone's played Star Trek Adventures First Edition, they would have a really easy time jumping on board with this.
Yes. It's a very
Okay.
easy transition.
Okay. So on a story side, these robots, they have been humanity from Earth, correct?
Yes.
Humanity from Earth sent these things or set up these things on a planet to terraform the planet, to make the planet ready for human habitation. And for whatever reason, these things became sentient before humans arrived, whether or not humans are going to arrive. It sounds like that's sitting out there. I won't pick at that too much. But so they not only achieve sentience, but they also have emotions. So this is not just like lieutenant or commander. This isn't Data from Star Trek The Next Generation, where he is sentient, but he does not have emotions. And then there's this whole, the whole multiple story arcs related to that. These things have emotions from the jump.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, that was
Okay.
all part of whatever this awakening was. And part of what we're doing with this revised edition of the core rulebook is we are getting down to the nitty-gritty about one, what was the program that got these robots to the planet? What happened so that humanity has kind of not been around because humanity was on the same ship as these robots. So where has humanity gone? What has happened? And so on and so forth. I brought on Aaron Paulier, who has written for Star Trek Adventures,
Hmm.
and he's kind of done some sciency stuff about terraforming and went through like he actually found a star in the sky that it would make sense that these things went to.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
so yeah. So the goal of this new edition was really to dig down into the world so that GMs have or what we call the director has much more to bite into when they're making their stories.
Okay. Okay. So rules wise, like you said, similar to Star Trek Adventures First Edition with challenge dice. Um, and I personally, I'm kind of on the whole challenge dice, the change for second edition. I can see where I can see where it makes sense, and I can also see where I'm like, whatever. I'm going to stick with challenge dice. It doesn't. I think they work. From what I remember from reading Sentience, I think it makes sense, and I think they work. So how? So okay, in the default, if there is something like a default campaign, like a lot of like I'm thinking Dungeons and Dragons Eberron, like Eberron starts 2 years after the Treaty of Thronehold, which itself is 2 years after the Day of Mourning, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. How long? How long has it? How much time has elapsed since they achieved sentience? And I mean, I would assume, so like you said, some level of chaos has broken out, and now this, like, what's the new normal? What are we supposed to be and do? How much time has elapsed?
Sure. So we what we've done is we've set up a timeline of all of the events, and it was 273 years, I believe, since they've left Earth and been terraforming the planet. And then we get to the awakening, and we get to a lot of events happening very quickly, right? And so about at the end of the second year after the awakening, after all this chaos was happening, several of the custodians of the main computer cluster there, known as the hub, have come together and have started flooding robots with information about what emotions mean and how to like regulate themselves and things like that. So you can play in the immediate aftermath of the awakening. You can play right as we are wrapping up this chaos that happens just after the awakening. And then you can play like 5 to 7 years when maybe organized religion is starting to pop up, things like that. So we give a full timeline of all the events, and you can choose which era you want or which year you want to play in, essentially.
So then, because this is a planet that was meant to be not only terraformed, but set up for humanity from Earth, what I'm hearing is there were all kinds of not just infrastructural, but like cultural and political and architectural and all these kinds of like the groundwork is laid for whatever economy is going to be there. It's like they're they were in the process as robots of building a world that human like a shake and bake world, and
Yeah.
humanity just shows up. So when you talk about things like, people might see like robots, religion, how the heck does that work? If they're supposed to be building this world that is like plug and play for humanity, then it's supposed to, whatever they've inherited, this information that they're being flooded with, it sounds to me like this is like an image of what humanity looks like at this point in the future. And now these things are just basically having a massive amount of like encyclopedia information downloaded into them. Now they're trying to figure out what to do.
And they're trying to figure out, hey, while we wait for humanity to return, do we want to mimic their society? Do we want to set up something different?
Okay.
Like how do laws apply here?
Right.
Do we continue doing our jobs? Right? We were
Right.
designed to come and make solar panels, but now we're self-aware. Like, do we continue doing so? This inner turmoil and this questioning of like, what do we do? How do we make
Purpose.
this world? Is really the driving force of
Hmm.
sentience. And
So when it comes to playing it, like what kinds of stories do you envision players and GMs saying, "Hey, this game's got, here it has a system. I mean, we love Star Trek Adventures. I love 2d20. It's a terrific system. I haven't played it much in a long time, but it's a great system. Here's an accessible system that you can do a lot of things with. It's very flexible. And if you're listening and you have not played Star Trek Adventures or you have not played 2d20, but especially for I think something like this, Star Trek Adventures is such an elegant and flexible system to do so many different things with. You as a player, a team of players, you can easily get creative and use the system to figure out how to make things happen. What kinds of adventures, what kinds of stories do you see, and maybe have you written, that people would be able to enjoy in this game?
so so the first thing that I put out there to my writers who are helping out as well when they're writing adventures is that the opening scene should always be some type of social situation. So there are that like one of the adventures, you and your friends are going bowling, another one you're going camping, another one you're going hiking, just to explore what a social experience is to someone that hasn't had these emotions before or the self-awareness. Right, because they're getting this information. Hey, this is what humans do for fun, so maybe we should check this out too. And then that usually leads to a call to action. And in our Chronicles of the Awakening book, we have horror adventures, we have natural disaster adventures, we have action adventures. So like there are a lot of different subgenre of story that can be told through this perspective and should be told through the perspective of someone who is just learning what it means to be alive or to be human, if you will.
So then that foundation, that call it like a thematic and character foundation of the game, you think that could fit into most anything?
Yeah,
Because like I mean, if we were going to make a list of like, your A list of adventure genres, like you just said, horror, action, investigation, emergency, stuff like that. You envision this enabling players and GMs to do any of those kinds of things, albeit with this additional layer of this foundation of the story of like these robots trying to figure out what the heck they are.
right, right. And at the same time, getting different points of view as to what maybe other factions or organizations might have on the awakening and on the return of humanity, because there might be some that are alive that are like, we don't want the humans to come back, we want to establish our own society, right? There's some that are maybe becoming spiritual and thinking of the humans as their creators.
Yeah,
right?
I was just thinking actually, and you said the F word. I thought factions. Like, are there factions? Because I could see in this, like you could have some that interpret their change from, a programmed to a sentient being as being like, look, we now we're going to do our own darn thing, and we don't have to do anything to mimic or serve or look like or behave like or view things like the humans do. So you could have a faction like that. And I don't know if this is the case. I'm just guessing. I'm just thinking through this. Like, you could have that. You could have the ones who, again, see the humans are our creators, or now, and like they're our gods, or now we're on the same level as them. And so when they show up, they're going to be like our brothers, or maybe we don't want them to show up, or
Yeah,
I'm assuming there are factions.
yeah. Or like the big one is when the humans show up, are they going to try to subjugate us again? Right? Because the whole thing is nobody knows what caused the awakening. Nobody's been able to recreate the awakening. I leave that up to the director for their story to determine
Okay.
why that happened. I kind of like that open-ended
Yeah.
idea. But yeah, so there are factions. I just finished doing a format edit with the adventure that Michael Dismuke turned in called Circuit Breakers. And the faction he creates in there is a faction that has really embraced the concept of the emotion of fear,
Okay.
and is very much like Point Break, actually. It's very, very cool.
So you have not established like what caused the awakening. Have you? And don't answer if you have, because there are probably people out there who will be interested in this and they want to play it and they don't want to have this ruined. But do you have an answer as to why humanity hasn't shown up yet, and whether or not they're going to show up at all?
So what I can say
Okay.
is humanity has not shown up yet because the ship that they were traveling to their destination on suffered a catastrophic collision, and the robots part of the ship kind of broke off and went to a different destination. So
Okay.
humanity's part of the ship went off to a different destination too, and they're still in cryostasis way out there in space.
So
So that's actually,
whether or not those two come together, is that something as yet to be determined, or is that something that you would potentially write adventures for or content for? What are you thinking about that?
yeah, my plan is to get a couple of other books in after the Kickstarter, once it's mega successful, like I'm sure it has been. And then I have the idea of a campaign called The Return, and I think it's going to be 8 or 9 interlinked adventures.
Okay.
And I would like to do that probably a couple years down the road.
So it's something along the lines of like the Shackleton Expanse.
Yeah,
That's what came to mind. That where you have setting material and you have a bunch of adventures that can be played in sequence and make up a campaign and a location and some themes.
yeah,
That
sort of
makes
like that,
sense.
or like any of the Octung Cthulhu campaigns that have come out,
Yeah.
same idea, right? Like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they do it really well.
Yeah.
So that's down the road a little bit. I think that we have 1 or 2 ideas before that. I think what would be really cool is if we are successful and the line keeps going, I want to bring Michael Dismuke in and do a Your Awakening solo game
Oh, that's cool.
where you start the game when you're awakened. Like
Mhm.
that's where you start telling your solo story, and then you go through and you basically play through the entire life path process,
Mhm.
and then you'll have a full character that you can take on and actually play the full game.
And for those of you listening who don't know, Michael Dismuke does a lot of writing for Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah, and he was the lead writer on the Captain's Log solo game,
There you go.
so I would love to get his insights on something like that for
Yeah.
Sentience.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought a lot about different it's like solo games and like things that you could do with that and different kinds of genres you could adapt to that. That actually that'd be an interesting way, especially with his experience with Captain's Log, which I think is a terrific book. Just as an aside, I think it's a terrific book if you were running, like me personally, I don't do solo RPGs,
Same.
but I like what's in that book for generating ideas for using as
Yep,
a Star Trek Adventures GM is perfect for that.
absolutely.
But I could see that as being kind of a cool way to for especially for someone, because there are a lot of people out there, I meet these people at cons and whatnot, but I mean, there are definitely a lot of, you've got all different kinds of gamers. You've got folks who just want to hack and slash. You've got folks who are like heavy into simulationism and things like that. You got people who really want like to be part of a narrative. And then you've got folks who really like character. Like they want to develop their character. And a solo game like that would I think scratch the itch for that kind of a player. And I think in general, Sentience sounds like it's the kind of game that would scratch the itch of people who want, I guess for lack of a better word, be a little more serious and thoughtful and focused about like deeper character levels.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's where we really want to. It's exploring yourself. It's exploring like what humanity even means to a character. You know what I mean? And I'm really excited because this game also allows, like, you'll see on the cover there is like a humanoid type robot, but there's also non-humanoid type
Makes
robots
sense.
that are just random, ridiculous looking things that can be your character. So I love that you're also given that ability to kind of create your own image of what a robot looks like while you're going through and telling those personal stories. I think that's a big draw for some people as well.
Where did this come from? Like, what was the creative spark or the impetus? Because I think I've said this to you, and this is in the intro or the preface or whatever to Aris, that I had this idea of like a rare magic fantasy setting for a long time, and I tried a couple of different systems, and I thought about using, coming up with my own system, and then when the World Builders program opened up, and I was like, okay, I can do this with 2d20. So I'd had this idea. I tried it. Where did this come from?
So after the whole 5e debacle where they were getting rid of the OGL and all that stuff, there were a lot of my
That's a nice
friends who
company.
were like, they were sad because they weren't going to have a job anymore, right?
Sure.
Like I have friends whose jobs were publishing on Drive Through RPG and whatnot. And so I went on to Twitter each day and I tried to just like give different ideas for types of role-playing games that you could create that were not D&D. Because yes, like I understand that D&D is popular and all, but if you're an amazing writer, you can do amazing things. So
Yeah.
this was one of those ideas that I threw out there. And then 3 weeks later or a month later or whatever, they announced the World Builders program. I'm like, oh wait, maybe I can do this. And I started looking at all the different 2d20 systems to try to start thinking about things. And I came across the approaches that are used in a couple of the games.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if I could tweak that and make that like emotions, and that's where I kind of really started going with it. I love, I'm a character driven guy, and I know it's not for everyone, but this is an opportunity to play a game that, one, if you want to do hardcore combat and get crunchy, you can, or if you want to focus on telling deep character stories, you can as well. So I was just lucked out that World Builders program started.
So that's in other words, what you're saying is the idea for this was just one of those things like, what about this? What about that? It's just like it was something that just came out. It wasn't
Yep.
something that like, oh man, I've been thinking about this and turning it over in my head for ages, and finally, now's my day. That's okay, that's cool. I dig that because I mean, creative sparks, they can come from anywhere. And seeing when you start tugging on the string, like how far does it take you? It's cool that it took you through to a whole game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting that I was lucky enough that idea came to me that day, and then Modifius did the World Builders, and I was like, let's do it.
So now tell me about the change. Originally World Builders was available to folks like you, like me, like anybody who wanted to use their 2d20 SRD to produce, and you could only sell through drive-through, and you could not do physical copies, couldn't do printed copies. how has this changed, and how is this about to go to Kickstarter? And then
So
tell me about that, and then I'll ask you about the Kickstarter itself.
yeah, yeah. So this was Sentience was really just like a Word doc with a header and footer and a couple of pictures that I put into it. And I was approached after probably about a year of it being on drive through by a guy by the name of Jay Sudelius, who owns the Yellow Hand, which is a collective of creators who work together to create different RPG books. And some are digital, some are print on demand, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he put together 2 pages of what he thought the layout for Sentience could look like. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Let's roll with it. And so I've been working with Jay and the Yellow Hand for a couple of years now. And finally, after much diligence, we were able to get in contact with Chris Birch at Modifius. And we said, here's what we want to do. We're going to take it to Kickstarter. Here's what it looks like. Will you let us have the commercial license? And after a little bit of back and forth, Chris met with us virtually 3 times, and we signed on to the dotted line. And yeah, we're going to be the first non-Modifius company to release a 2d20 role-playing game. So we're pretty excited about that.
Very cool.
And along the way, we picked up Troy Meppians and Ashland, and we had you join up to do some stuff with Aris.
Yep.
And hopefully we can get a few more Kickstarters out there, as the year progresses.
Yeah, it's terrific, and it's interesting because like all my interactions with the folks at Modifius, and I don't want to sound like a shill at all.
It's so hard.
All the interactions I've had with the folks there, they're decent folks, and I absolutely respect a company that wants to protect its brand and protect its identity, and the perceptions that the owners, who it's their entire right, want to maintain. And so I appreciate that, like, hey, they started this off, but they had avenues where if creators like you and Jay wanted to say, listen, can we formalize this relationship a little bit more, and that they're willing to do it. So tell me about the Kickstarter. When does it go? What's in it? I'll put a link to it, or at least where you can sign up for information. But tell me about what's going on with that.
So by the time this is on air, I'm sure that we're going to be going strong. I'm sure we've already had a successful Kickstarter funded on day one, which is going to be Monday, January 27th. There are 3 items that will be a part of that Kickstarter: the core rule book, the Chronicles of the Awakening, which should have, I believe it's going to have 7 adventures in it. It might have 8, depending on stretch goals. And then we're going to have the toolkit, which is going to have basically GM screen inserts. We're not doing a full GM screen because I think it's wasteful to have a GM screen for every single game.
I bet that's also prohibitive, like cost wise. I could see where that would be a real hassle. But anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. And so that's going to come with probably a 20 to 30 page booklet, depending on how many stretch goals we get to. That should have an adventure, some adventure seeds, and new roles, new playable characters, and so on. So that book's gonna, as we get more and more stretch goals, that book's gonna fill up more and more. So that's exciting.
The core book. Is it hardback? Is it softback? Is it both?
Yeah. So it'll be hardcover and digital. Same thing with Chronicles of the Awakening. I think Chronicles of the Awakening is going to be softcover and digital.
Okay.
And it's going to have the core rule book is going to have everything you need to play. It's going to have 2 adventures in it, and again, I'm saying those numbers, but as we meet stretch goals, we're going to add more and more and more. So
for the initial for the rollout of the Kickstarter, how long is the core rule book?
I believe we are shooting for 200 pages.
Okay.
It might end up at 220.
Okay. All right.
Depending on stretch goals.
Okay. And then how long is it going to run?
So we're running for a month. I'm excited to see where it goes, you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, this drops on the 29th. So this will drop 2 days after the Kickstarter rolls out.
Awesome.
So, what I will do is, since we're recording this before the thing goes, but it will go out after, I'll get the link from you. And so the link is below. The link's in the podcast show notes. The links will be in the YouTube show notes. Go check it out. I mean, 2d20 is, if you haven't played it before, it's a terrific game. It's a terrific system. We've got episodes from the last 3.5 years where we talk about like all aspects of it. We talk about the SRD. We've talked about all different, we talked about the first version of Sentience. But it's a great flexible system where you can do a lot with it. Like, one of the things I love most about Star Trek Adventures First Edition is the scientific method. I love it because that immediately, it feels like Star Trek right away. Everyone's talking gonzo ideas and solving problems with your space amoeba that's trying to eat your warp drive or something like that. I love that. But you can also like do crazy, swinging from the ceilings, World War II pulp stuff in Octoon Cthulhu. Like it somehow functions for all of those. So I'm really interested to see how it functions with this character heavy, kind of, it's a science fiction game, but there sounds like there's a lot more to it as well.
Yeah. You can do a lot of subgenres within that science fiction.
Cool. Well, Al, I appreciate you taking the time to come on to talk to me about this. Folks, if you're listening, obviously you're listening because you're hearing me ramble. Take a look at the links. Take a look at the Kickstarter. Join our Discord community. Leave some comments. If you've played the game, you picked it up on drive-thru a while ago. Let us know what you think and the cool stuff that you've done with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jeremy. And if you go out to YouTube and search Sentient, you'll find a bunch of live plays if you're interested.
Excellent.
The links are also on sentiencerpg.com.
And I'll put that link in the notes as well. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can join our Discord, you can subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a great day. We look forward to talking with you.